As far as exercises for yourself, what are things that you keep, like if you're going to sit down to practice, what's an exercise that you go over every time you sit down?
Yeah, I would say, God, what is something I do all the time? I think it's important to sort of loosen up the major and minor sides of any key. Mm-hmm. Now, by that, what I mean is just I got to go theory to get really quickly. Yeah. So, a major scale, we'll just talk about C major. It's C to C. There are no sharps, no flats. Yeah. In that, there are 3 major triads and 3 minor triads. All right. Mm-hmm. So 1, 4, 4, 5 are your major. In this case, C, F, and G. If you're a numbers person, 1, 4, and 5. Yep. But as well, we have 3 minors, right? So we got E minor, D minor, and we got A minor, yep. Right? So I like to put on like a loop or a vamp, all right? And just sit there and just roll these triads all over the bass and just move in zones and just loosen up and get comfortable just letting my hands sort of roll and fly. So yeah. So for me, that ends up being a good way to sort of kind of put the sound of the key in my head, but at the same time start sort of playing lines as opposed to just running like, right? So, which is totally valid, and it's good to be able to run your major scales up and down. Yeah. But now you can start sort of getting little melodic fragments together, yeah. Right? And I find, doing that in different keys really, really helps. Yeah. And it also helps you sort of, when you play in a different key on bass, sometimes it's easy to just kind of go like, oh, I'm playing in C. Oh, I'm playing in E major. Oh, I'm playing in A major. Like you can kind of find these pockets, but if you don't really explore the nuances of each one of these sort of keys and where they sit in your hands, you can kind of get a little bit lazy with that. And then when it comes time to execute, it may not come out as comfortably and effortlessly as you want, right? So. Yeah, and even though it's the same shape and you're shifting, there's still something to playing through a key and being comfortable where those notes land. And if you don't work on it, it just doesn't seem to happen, right? So, and I have a saying, and I'm saying this in every interview and lesson that we do, is how you practice scales is how you improvise. Oh, for sure, and so if all you ever do is play your C major scale, and a lot of people pick C because it's the first one we learn, if you play that from C to C, up and down, we always start at the bottom, go up, and then go down.
even just starting at the top changes how you improvise, or moving it to, the 8th fret on the E string instead of the 3rd fret, all those things. But then, like you said, if you look at breaking it into little chunks, like the triads that are in it, all of a sudden you've got all these other avenues. And I think that's something something I had to work on after a while too, but it's something that we skip a lot. Is it's like, okay, well, no, I know that this is in C major and this mode goes with that chord and blah blah blah, but then we don't run through all the modes either, right? So there's that. So those exercises like that are, I think that's something that we probably all have to keep in our practice all the time, because it's just new vocabulary, right? So
and it's really nice to see like one of the things I like about bass, it's 4 strings, it's tuned in fourths.
Yeah.
So the geometry is very consistent. Like if you were playing guitar, you got that half step up after the G string to the B, which totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, people adjust to it, and like there are benefits to having that there, and it kind of does increase your ability to go vertically through something.
Yeah.
But by the same token, like on a 4-string bass, like it's very interesting to see like all the box patterns, which I think is part of why bass is looked as the easy instrument, because like it makes sense very quickly. But like even if we look at like thinking about C and our 1 4 5, if we start on our lowest option for that, it's our 4. There's your F, G, C, F, G, C, right? And then like it's all there, right? So seeing and recognizing these patterns, and like, okay, so it's all about this sort of shift up 2, and then in line. And then we're in the same line, up a fourth, and then up a second, up a fourth. So it's all fourths and fifths between your major triads, the major chords.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in minor. Yeah. Like if you take those 3 minor chords, they share the exact same relationship. So like A, D, E, A, D, E. Oh, well, what do we got here?
Yeah.
We got our note, up a fourth, up a second, up a fourth, up a fourth, up a second, you know, and then reverse that down. So holy crap, look at that. Like we have all these very obvious geometric relationships between our majors and our minors. And then if you add on top of that, the fact that each one of these minors is related to one of these majors, like A minor triad is a third away from C major triad, D minor, F, right? And then E, G.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so now we've got, right? So then we just move that up a fourth.
Yeah.
Okay, we move that up a second. And then we move that up a fourth, and so on.
Yeah.
Your lines keep expanding. So it goes from like single notes to triads to, you know, like combining these triads into what would essentially be like a 7th arpeggio.
Yeah.
You know, so like you can just keep, it's a never-ending evolution of expanding on a very basic concept. And I think it's because the bass on a 4-string bass, there's such economy of option, you know.
Yeah. So how would you apply the same concept into improvising or soloing?
Right. Well, for me, and this becomes very relevant when I'm sort of trying to teach younger people how to go from that point where they just know enough of relationships between chords and scales, but everything sounds very stiff and they don't really feel comfortable trying ideas necessarily. They're just maybe running a scale up and down.
Yeah.
This is a good way to sort of loosen up and kind of work a sound, because a lot of these melodic fragments are, you know, like taking a concept where we're using a minor statement.
Yeah.
And, you know, and maybe applying the 3 minor sort of options you have in any key, your 1, your 3, and your 5, and then sort of using a little bit of repetition with there as well. So starting them up with something as simple as like just roots. If you don't mind, there's a track there, so we can just give an example. So we're in D minor. I got a hip shot here, so I'll take my E down to D. So you hear some context. So I would start with something as simple as like, okay, so A, D, E. Those are our 3 notes. We sort of identified how easily, you know, they're related. Like we're either like, there's your A, up a fourth. There's your D, up a second. And then up one again. Well, oh my God, well, there's also the octave, right?
Yeah.
So, and that exists everywhere. So I just usually get things started this way with just like, something like that. Just get them playing little fragments, just using the roots. And then I'm like, each one of these notes, they're minor. So each one's got a third. So let's identify those together. So maybe I'll go like 3-1. So. So there's our D key centered again.
Yeah.
And then have them move it around the bass a little bit. Like, it doesn't just have to be here. You know, we got the A's. Right?
Yep.
So then I'm like, okay, beautiful. So now triad. Let's move in that fifth. So now I just have them play one concept, moving through. I'll start maybe really easy. 1, 3, 5. And again, you know, maybe I'll start on the D this time. So there's the A. And then just have them repeat ideas. So right? And then moving it through. You can stop the track.
Yeah, sure.
And then just constantly sort of expanding and allowing it to do stuff. And like, you know, what I find amazing about this is, especially with younger bass players, you start getting to do this, and then automatically in between these ideas, these little islands of ideas, they'll start filling in other notes, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what you want, because, you know, it's a great marriage between conscious thought and unconscious thought, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're aiming for things, you're playing ideas, you're trying to get things out there, but in between that, you sort of connect with just kind of letting your unconscious brain kind of get there and make noise, right?
Yeah.
So, and you know, there's that whole flow state thing where like, you know, when you're in it, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So kind of building those things in there, and then same thing with major over minor, you know, and then you connect the major and the minor together, and then, you know, just like, okay, so how does this all work over different changes? You know, it's kind of easy to sit there on one chord, and then obviously from there, what's very important, and I think it's important, not to just play, but like know kind of like, okay, so if minor is a skeleton, you know, 1, 3, 5, you know, and then 7. Well, through this, you know, especially if we're playing over D here, 1, 3, 5, 7. Well, then we got other optional notes in here. Like, okay, there's the major 6, that's coming from somewhere. There's the flat 6, it's coming from somewhere, you know. And then also, like, I mean, if we're talking about our 3 minor chords, there's also, you know, your Phrygian, which is your flat 2. Yeah. Just, you should know what those are. It's important to kind of know it, not so you know it, but just so you can access it, you know. And part of that is just getting comfortable moving through those, you know. You know, like you could do a whole, I'm sure at some point there's going to be a whole course on like how to relate, you know, these modes to what you're doing. And
oh, for sure.
Probably taught by Rich Brown or something like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So. He tends to know that stuff, I guess.
Oh, he's a beast.
Yeah, but it's like you can hear as you're moving from one of the triads to another, it actually gives the line some variety. Where if you just look at that thing as an A minor scale or a D minor scale, it really sounds just like you're staying on that. Like it sounds very scalar and very much stuck in one spot, whereas you're sort of kind of imposing a bit of a chords change over top of it, and it just gives that line a whole lot more variety. So,
well, and the other thing that's interesting about all this is like there's a million ways to look at everything, and you should look at it in as many different ways as possible. Like, not just to be able to explain it, but just you know, like if we're playing, like basically we're playing in C. Even though we're over a D minor, we're basically kind of playing using the notes of C major in this case for the most part with what I was doing. If you're staying very inside, but then, I mean, it's a valid question. Well, if it's all just C major, who cares? But like, I get that. Like I've had people say that to me, and like I've thought it at one point. I'm like, oh, this is just C major. I can just play C major. But the problem with that is like, it's the fragments and the little pieces of how you reorganize these things that makes what you're playing interesting. And like there's like so that's a D. If I'm playing a D and I play, that sounds very like I'm there. You know, if I play, that seems further away from home.
Yes.
I bring it back home. That's D up to an E minor triad.
Yeah.
If I play an A minor triad, that's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But it's all about how far the harmonic relationship is to the key center you're in.
Yeah.
And the guys that do this really well, you know, they take something very simple, like a minor triad or a pentatonic or whatever, and they reorganize it to make it not just sound like C major over a D minor thing.
Yeah.
They make it sound like I'm taking you on this journey using a very simple thing. I'm using a minor triad, and I'm going to take you from the furthest point back home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just got to be able to recognize that. And a lot of that's just playing and like, and also allowing your ears to accept things. Like, it's very easy to accept that's D, that's a D. That's a very easy thing to accept.
Yeah.
A 5 is very easy to accept.
Yeah.
That sounds a little haunting. That's the 2.
Yeah.
That still sounds a little haunting. You know what I mean? So you get into these situations where you're like, okay, well, why does E over D sound that way versus D over D? You know, like, why is 5 easy to hear? That's a little weird. Why is this really kind of?
Yeah.
Why does that make me a little tense? You know what I mean? But that's a good thing at certain times.
Yeah.
Because you resolve. I'm playing a B flat, by the way, over this D. So. Once that comes back to an A, you feel that immediate release and relaxation.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a lot of hoity-toity ways of saying, like, different notes have different effects, but if you know what they are, then you know how to use them. If you know how to use them, doesn't that make you a more interesting player than just somebody who runs A minor pentatonic over something, you know, over an A minor chord, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of the struggle that everybody starts with is it's not hard to play within the changes, but it's really hard to make it interesting until you start, like you said, melodic fragments and just finding other ways, like other scales that'll work with that chord or other ways to play through it. Because if you're just running the scale up and down, it sounds like you're running a scale up and down, and it's that, like you said, with the notes that sound tense and then resolving, it's that tension and resolve that make the story interesting. And if your ears can hear, like if you know when you hit that note and you're used to that tension, you're not going to go, oh, I played a wrong note. Yeah. You're going to go into, okay, I need to resolve. I always think of Herbie Hancock, like that guy. I don't even know if I think he just lands on a note and that tells him where to go from there. Like he literally can start on any note he wants and come up with a really melodic phrase. And he's also been playing since he was a teenager and he's 80 years old now, but he's been doing it for a long time, right?
Yeah. So, that's a really good point. And I mean, it's going to sound like old man wisdom. And I by no means am I trying to talk like an authority of this. I recognize a fact that it's, we're taught usually, at least we used to be taught that like there are avoid notes. Yeah. And at a certain point, you do realize that no, there's really no bad notes. It's just poor execution. Yeah. You know, and because man, you can literally start anywhere, and you know, like there's stuff where like everybody says like, no, you can't play a flat 2 on a minor chord. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I hear that that's not a pleasant sound, and if you don't come out of that the right way, it's gonna sound like unintended. And I think that's what people really mean is like, you know, a mistake sounds like you're really not intending to say something. You're just sort of, or you just don't have the capacity to hear that it's a problem. Yeah. But I've heard some people like start on these really tense things and beautifully resolve themselves into stuff. Like I mean, I know we just said Rich Brown, but like, he's a great player. His ears are big. He can hear a lot, and he's willing to start. He's a guy that can make things that are simple sound incredibly complex. Yes. And he can also navigate incredibly complex things. Yeah. He sees the path, and he knows how to get there. Yeah. Yeah. These are all like sort of bigger concepts with all this stuff, but it's really once you kind of nerd out on this and start to enjoy this kind of things, music just becomes this whole other bigger universe for you. You know? So.
It's just a never-ending game that you can. You know, there's never a high enough level, I think, for any of us. So.